With the rumors going around that the next Halo project is going to be Halo CE remade in Unreal Engine, I wanted to take a minute to talk about something very, very crucial when it comes to taking something like Halo and remaking it, because we've seen it done poorly and well in remasters, and we've seen it done as it should be with the originals, but I want to talk about it today. What I'm talking about is graphics versus art style. It's really important, and you've probably seen it, but you've probably never really thought about it. So today, I want to give 3 examples of graphics versus art style. And fortunately, we don't even have to leave the Halo series to talk about these 3 things. But what are these 3 things? Well, those 3 things are what happens when you put graphics above art style, what happens when you improve graphics but honor the art style with those improved graphics, and what happens when the graphics and the art style are made in tandem to work with one another. And like I said, we don't actually have to leave the Halo series to talk about any of those, so let's dive in. First off, I want to make it clear what I mean when I say graphics versus art style. Graphics, for me, refers to the technical side of how a game looks. The number of polygons used to make up a model, the detail density in a given environment, or the resolution of a texture. Art style, in my opinion, isn't bound by graphics. Look at Paper Mario, for example. It's a very good-looking game, but if you look at the bare-bones graphics, it's actually pretty simple. But if you look at God of War, there's obviously an art style they're going for, but the art style benefits from an abundance of detail and nuance provided by the graphics. In my opinion, art style is about more than just how the game looks, but it's also about what it conveys to the player. Hopefully that clears things up a little bit, but now let's dive into the first of those 3 things I talked about. What happens when you put graphics above the art style? It's probably not going to come as a surprise to anybody, but the example we're going to use for this first thing is Halo CE Anniversary. Like, just looking at the opening menu gives me a very look at the detail vibe, but this focus on graphics over art style rears its head in so many other aspects of the game. There's a YouTuber named Noodle who did a really deep dive into Halo CE Anniversary and all of its problems, but one of the examples he gives was the fact that there is just an overabundance of detail and a really busy design put into this new Anniversary graphics, and this causes enemies to blend into the environment around them. The original art style for Halo CE colored the enemies very clearly so that they were easy to identify at a glance and they stood out from the environment. They don't in the new graphics, and the Flood are the worst offenders. But aside from that, I assume that Saber Interactive really wanted to show off these new graphics because everything is super, super bright. Halo CE had several dark environments throughout the campaign to force the player to use the flashlight to see. These different areas of light and dark really helped add atmosphere to the environment and forced you as the player to use the flashlight more, which was an element of the gameplay sandbox. In the Halo CE Anniversary graphics, you don't need to use the flashlight outside of the tutorial for the flashlight. But what happens when all of these bad decisions come together? Well, let's take a look at 343 Guilty Spark. In the original graphics, it was a tense and uneasy feeling mission with hints of storytelling sprinkled all over the place. Like, look off in the distance, there are shadowy figures running off. Like, what are those? Look at all this blood, what is going on? Now in the new graphics, you literally see the Flood models in the distance, and the blood is toned way back, and oh god, let's not even talk about how the dark, damp, foggy environment has been replaced with a bright, clear plant rave with interiors that make me want to put an energy sword in my temple and twist! Overall, Halo CEA takes the original art style and ignores it for the sake of showcasing the graphics. And it ruins the experience for old players and gives new players the wrong idea of what Halo CE was supposed to be. But with that out of the way, let's talk about what happens when you improve the graphics of a game while honoring the original art style. Let's talk about Halo 2 Anniversary. Now for this section of the video, I'm only going to be talking about the actual gameplay graphics of Halo 2 Anniversary and not the cutscenes. The cutscenes are great and they also fit the original art style, but they have no impact on gameplay. So we're just going to be talking about the in-game graphics during gameplay. So taking a look back at the original version of Halo 2, it was really clear when it came out that it was pushing the limits of the original Xbox. The amount of things that Bungie had intended to put into Halo 2 that got cut could be an entire video all on its own. But what we ended up with was a pretty good looking game for an original Xbox title, but something that was clearly begging to be given a remaster. Oh, side note by the way, Late Night Gaming actually did an entire video showcasing how Halo 2's models were originally intended for Bungie's Stencil engine, which implemented real-time stencil shadows. It was actually something they also showed off in the E3 demo, and that's why the lighting for the E3 demo looks totally different than the retail release. Basically, when you put these models into a dynamic lighting area, they really pop. So even though Halo 2 looks pretty good for an OG Xbox game, it's clear that it could have looked even better if Bungie was given stronger hardware or more time. But honestly, Halo 2's art style still carried the game, even if those graphical elements were missing or had to be cut. So with that being said, Halo 2 Anniversary took a decent looking game with some lacking graphics and made it look like a modern title while still keeping the original intentions of the art style intact. Like, there are even elements of implied detail on the original textures for these models that are now just detail. It's done so well that the team that remastered this should be proud. If Halo CE Anniversary ruined what players remembered of Halo CE, Halo 2 Anniversary is what we imagined the game to look like in our heads when we played the original back in the day. Halo 2 Anniversary took what was great about the original art style of the game and kept it at the forefront while improving the graphics around it. And so that's what happens when you improve the graphics of a game while honoring the original art style. So at this point then, we've seen what happens when you put graphics before art style, what happens when you improve graphics but you honor the original art style, but what about when you develop graphics and art style hand in hand from start to finish? May I introduce Halo 3. Anytime I hear people talking about a Halo 3 remaster, I always ask why. I mean, if you look at it, Bungie had a very clear intention and art style for every character model, every environment, every enemy, and every weapon. The Xbox 360 had a ton of power compared to the OG Xbox, but still lacked graphics power by today's standards, so Bungie could actually implement these higher quality models and more dense environment details, but they also still had to use tricks and make systems that implied detail that the Xbox couldn't just render using brute force graphics like you would get from a modern PC or gaming console today. These little tricks and systems, along with Bungie's already well-established art style for Halo, meant that when you combine all of them together, you have a game that, in my opinion, still looks great to this day. The implied and actual details on models, thanks to more polygons combined with high-quality bump maps, the incredibly well-designed lighting and color grading that holds up even to this day, the amazing explosions that rival even modern games, sadly, and the amazing use of dense but vast environments with amazingly beautiful skyboxes means that Halo 3 is one of those rare games that not only feels timeless to play, but still looks good over 17 years after it originally hit shelves. And playing it on the Master Chief Collection at the higher resolutions of modern consoles and PCs, it still looks good and begs the question of, does it need a remaster? And in my opinion, the answer is no. And that is the benefit of developing graphics and art style hand in hand from start to finish. So with the rumors of this Halo remake going around, I really hope that whoever's responsible for it takes option number 2 or option number 3. Improve the graphics while keeping true to the original art style, or develop the art style and the graphics hand in hand from start to finish. Bungie obviously pulled a lot of inspiration from 80s action and sci-fi movies as well as anime to make a super unique yet realistic, futuristic sci-fi art style for the original trilogy of Halo. And considering that the art style still looks good in Halo 3 to this day, I think it is very possible to keep and honor that art style while modernizing it for a new generation of gamers. And I really hope they do that. But until then, I'll be over here playing on the original graphics and art style of Halo 1, the remastered graphics with the honored art style of Halo 2, and the timeless combination of beautiful graphics and a great art style of Halo 3. Anyway, that's been it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you all think down in the comments below. This has been something I've wanted to talk about for a while and finally had all the capture footage together to do it. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, maybe subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I will see you in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one.